for her to share her life with you and that you get some transformation from it. So, welcome to Kingdom Platforms, Dr. D.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It is exciting to be here. So thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Hey, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So before we get into all this goodness that we got planned going forward, what our Holy Spirit has planned,
Yep.
because this is a Holy Spirit conversation, um, talk more about like your background, your story up until this point.
All right. So again, DeAndrea Matthews, there's so much there as far as my story. It's hard to pick a certain spot to start with. So I'll start with just telling who I am and then we'll just kind of go from there. So I am an author, I am a publisher, I am the director of diversity and inclusion. I've been doing diversity and inclusion work for probably about 15 years. In addition to that, I'm an educator. I've been an educator for over 20 years now, and I'm also senior pastor of Visions International Ministry. So I wear lots of different hats in my role currently, and God uses me in lots of different ways to impact people and to help them to see the greatness within and also to live their very, very best lives and to impact the lives of others in a greater way. So that's where I am right now. It's been a long road getting to where I am. So that's kind of the synopsis, if you would.
So you're living in multiple worlds here. Or as
Yes,
we say, you have different platforms that God is using you on. So
absolutely.
talk more about your publishing platform and also the platform that God has given you at Wayne State University as diversity and inclusion.
Okay, so my hat as an author began about 2012, and I think that's about the time that we originally met, around 2012, 2013. But I became a publisher in 2017 because I really wanted to share stories, valuable stories, and everyone, I feel like everyone has a story that they can tell, that they can share, that's going to help others in their own lives, in their own struggles, to know that they're not alone. So the publishing company that I have, Claire Alden Publications, I am the president and founder, and it is really to help to diversify the publishing industry. So I want to be able to share the stories of the African American experience, the African American voice. If you look at the statistics, 29% of the children's books written about the African American experience are written by African American authors. That means that 71% are written by someone else. Not that that's a bad thing, they can't tell our story, but I want to empower African American authors to be able to tell their own stories using their authentic voices. So the tools and the professional services and the resources that my company provides is to be able to do that. So being able to capture those stories and share them. I was the kid that was under my grandparents listening to their oral stories, listening to the history, listening to their life stories. And I want to be able to help people who may not be as tech savvy, who may not know how to self publish or what that is like, provide them those professional services to get their stories out and capture that written legacy for generations to come.
Yeah.
So, move.
So what about this diversity and inclusion piece? That's a big, that is a huge platform. I know these are buzzwords that we've been hearing over the last
Yes.
5 to 10 years, and typically people we see in those roles are African Americans or quote unquote people of color.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell me more about how that journey has been for you.
So I started diversity and inclusion work about 15 years ago, and it has really been an extension of who I am naturally. When I look at it, it looks one way on the resume, but as I really began to dig deeper into the diversity and inclusion work, I started looking at my own history and what I bring to the table. And that journey really started for my family many, many years ago. I tell people as I'm giving my signature topic, which is the value of diversity in a world of differences, I talk about how my family has 5 generations of interracial relationships. So even just
Wow.
looking at that and how that has impacted me as a person and our family dynamics and how we look at people and how we, just embrace people and their stories, it has had a profound effect on me, and that translated into my business role. So, as the director of diversity and inclusion, my primary role is to monitor the diversity of our faculty, staff, and students at Wayne State School of Medicine. So that's my primary role. In that role, it includes pipeline work, it includes overseeing staff, it includes recruitment work that takes me across the country multiple times throughout the year, and it also has afforded me an opportunity to speak across the globe as an international speaker. So it is training involved, it's speaking opportunities involved, it's really connecting with people and showing them how their voice matters, their experiences matter. The population that I work with primarily in that role are first generation low income students. So, again, being able to show those that considering medical education, it wasn't necessarily designed for them because 75% of those who go into medicine are from the upper echelon as far as socioeconomic status. So, being able to empower these students, let them know your voice matters, your experiences matter, and these are the students that then go and serve in the underserved communities, in the medically underserved areas, in the health profession shortage areas, those who are the most vulnerable and need the most help.
So as I'm looking at everything that you're doing, the thread of connectivity is relationships and empowering people, like
Yes.
collaboration and relationships and empowering people.
Yes.
So when you think about all this work that you're doing, you haven't even mentioned that you're a mother. You haven't even mentioned that you are, you mentioned that you're a minister as well. So when you look at everything that you're doing, like that's a thread of connectivity between it all is you're empowering people, that you are making connections and you're collaborating.
Yes.
So how are you doing business in partnership with God? Like, what does that look like for you?
I will say this. If I did not have God, I wouldn't be able to handle it all because it's so many hats, it's so much going on, and God really is He leads and guides me. He makes everything work together. He makes everything work out as far as balance, as far as my peace of mind. Because with the people that I deal with across the many platforms that I serve, they have concerns that don't always come up in a 9 to 5 environment. They have conversations that need to take place that aren't always cut and dry. Some are very uncomfortable conversations. So being able to make myself available and not just be an active listener, but also have some vulnerability and share that I not only hear you, but I understand where you are and where you're coming from, because this has been my experience, even just to show them you're not alone, you're not the only one, and there is hope on the other side of this experience that you're going through right now. So God is the foundation of everything that I do, because it's only because of his grace that I have these various roles. And even if we begin to talk about how I came into these roles and things of that nature and how doors opened up, it was because it was divinely orchestrated. And I'm at the point in my life now where I understand that if the door is closed, that's not my door. Because if it's my door, then that door is going to open and I'm going to walk through it, and it won't be these various roadblocks necessarily that will prevent that next step, that next level from happening.
What you're talking about is a grace over grind mentality. I'm not sure if Shay Bynes, but she wrote this book called Grace Over Grind.
Okay, I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, please do. It transformed my life, the way I do business, the way I'm a husband, how I approach fatherhood and sonhood, brotherhood. Like, it really transformed my way of thinking. 2 books I want to share with you. So, okay. Grace Over Grind by Shay Bynes, and also a book by Dr. Jim Harris called Our Unfair Advantage. Right. How we can allow Holy Spirit to guide us in our business, in our professional world, right? So those 2 books right there that I read about a year and a half, 2 years ago, put me on track to do what I'm doing right now.
That's
and so
awesome.
I believe that you, as an intellectual, somebody who works in academia, I think you'll really appreciate those 2 pieces of work. So as you were talking, Holy Spirit was like, dig deeper into that diversity and inclusion piece, right? Because I know you're doing it in your professional world, but that's needed in the kingdom as well.
Oh, yes.
Because sometimes we can hide behind, brotherly love, but still not really address the social issues that are prevalent in our churches and in the kingdom. So how are you doing that from where you are?
So there is a model that I use that is applicable in every industry, and it's really the 4 levels of diversity. You start with the personal level of diversity, and one of the presentations that I do is called 25 Types of Diversity, where you look at not only the primary characteristics that are very popular, the things that you see. You can look at me and tell that I'm an African-American woman. So, those primary characteristics, you really don't have to explain a lot, but when you get into those secondary characteristics, it really looks deeper at why you're values are the way they are, the types of experiences you've had growing up, and who you are and how you've developed to be who you are today. So, starting with that individual level and looking at those various characteristics of diversity, then moving to the interpersonal level, that's how we begin to integrate with one another. Those are our interpersonal relationships, the relationships with our coworkers, the relationships with the people we live in the house with, the relationships with our family members, etc., so on and so forth. And then the third level is the institutional level, and the institutional level is really what we begin to look at as kingdom, as a kingdom. So interpersonal, yes, you have relationships with the people that you might sit next to in church, or that you might go to conferences with and have lunch dates with, and things of that nature. But when you look at the institutional level, you begin to look at it more on a widespread or a global basis. And then ultimately, the top level is the systems level, because the institution exists within these various systems, whether it's healthcare, education, government, entertainment, etc. So each of those, God wants us to dominate in these various areas, which I refer to as the seven mountains of culture. So we're supposed to dominate in these various different roles, and God has gifted us with talents and abilities to be able to serve in those purposes. I'm very aware that my mountain of culture is education. So a lot of what I do is in the educational realm, and it's to bring people to a greater understanding so that they can make better choices and be able to do the things that God is calling us to do.
Yeah. So, say for instance, we have a room that have African American believers, Caucasian believers, Hispanic believers, Asian believers, all in this one room.
Yep.
As somebody who is an authority in the diversity and inclusion, as you say, the mountain of culture, that's your mountain of culture. What would you do to bring that room together? Because like what makes us the same is that we believe God, we believe in Jesus, we believe in the Holy Right. That makes us the same. But there are some variables there that kind of will prevent us from actually going all in with, learning about one another if we allow it to. So how would you employ your research, or like what would you say in that room to equalize that room?
That's a very good point. So, two things could take place in an academic setting, and I use that first because I've actually had to do this in conferences that I've presented for. So, in the academic space, you can use case studies. Case studies really look at a specific scenario that many people in the room could be familiar with, and you want them to begin to identify themselves in that scenario. So you can use case studies if it's a more academic setting, but if we're looking at the church, if we're looking at people that we may not know, but we're in the room with them for the first time, again, storytelling is another one of those mechanisms that can be used in any industry. It doesn't matter if it's technology or if it is medicine. Storytelling, very similar to case studies, just a different format. Storytelling can be used to enhance the outcomes of any industry. So as we begin to share stories, as the word talks about, we overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. As we share those stories, as we share those testimonies, that is what equalizes the room. And you're no longer looking at that person by their skin color, by their sexual orientation, by, again, the car that they drive, the house that they have, and things of that nature, but you're looking at them because of their experiences, and that's where we connect. If we could understand that emotional connection between our brothers and sisters and understand that they go through the same way that we go through, they have losses and experience grief, we have losses and experience grief, we have triumphs and great victories, they have triumphs and great victories. Storytelling is what I would use to be able to kind of level that playing field.
So what happens beyond the story? What has to happen beyond the story to keep that narrative, to keep that conversation or that cultural collaboration going?
That's really the starting point. And a lot of times, whether it is used as an icebreaker, if it's something else going on in that conference or that room setting, or if it's used as more of the engagement between people, that is where you start. But once you start with that, all the walls begin to come down, because we each come in with these expectations. We each come in, kind of guarded, if you would, checking people out for the first time. They checking you out. You're trying to see what's going on. But as you begin to share those stories, those walls, those preconceived notions, those expectations start to come down. So that's the starting point. And depending on the desired outcomes for that function and for that gathering, that's where those other things begin to take place and become elevated. And now you can reach those outcomes that you desire as an end result.
Good stuff. Good stuff. When you hear the term kingdom platforms,
Yes.
kingdom platform, when you hear that, what comes to mind?
I'll be very honest. When I hear kingdom platforms, I get excited about it because what comes to mind is tearing down the things that separate us, tearing down the denominational differences, tearing down the physical, geographic barriers. All of that comes down when you look at kingdom because it's no longer about those local things that separate or may be similar, but it's about the larger platform. And again, even recognizing it's no longer about you. It really wasn't about you to start with, but it's no longer about you when you're looking at kingdom. It's about how can we come together in unity, each of us understanding what we bring to the table, where we add the most value, what skills and talents we have that can achieve these larger greater goals for the kingdom itself. We each have an assignment, and when we begin to understand how that works together as a body, then that's when we can really elevate the kingdom and establish what we are referring to as kingdom platforms.
Now, to get to the point to where you are right now, you're widely accomplished and you have a lot of influence, and but you handle it with grace, right?
Thank you.
Which is great. Um, but that didn't come without challenges.
Absolutely.
Right? You were born with this, and people liked you, and you got into these doors. No, there was a process, right? So, can you
Yes.
talk more about some of your deepest challenges to come to the understanding of where you are right now?
So the first thing that came to mind is the first thing that I'll share. And even in this space as Director of Diversity and Inclusion, like you said, it has come with its challenges. When I came into this role, it was the result of my previous director retiring. And I was offered the interim role at the time. And of course, with retirements at a large institution, other people are retiring at the same time. And what I began to notice is that the other people who were in similar positions, whose bosses had retired and they were offered an interim, within a year, they had been offered the permanent position. For me, I was in an interim role for 5 years. So that in itself was a challenge. Even within that time frame, I was supervising someone who made $30,000 more than me. So the financial challenges, the administrative challenges, the political challenges, because it's always these conversations before the meetings, the other things that are going on in a political environment, things of that nature. So even coming into this role itself, from interim to actually having the directorship was a challenge in itself. And some days, I wanted to be like, you know what, that's enough. I've had it and walk away. But like I said, God kept me, and I knew, okay, I'm in this role for a purpose. I'm gonna just kind of wait this out, and God was talking to me as He does, and just moving forward and maintaining my own sense of self, maintaining my own stability throughout all of the challenges that were experienced. And now I'm in a place where, equity has been achieved. I have this role that I actually dreamed about when I first came into this space. And I'm impacting other people in a greater way, and not just locally, but across the nation. So that's the first thing that came to mind because that was very heart wrenching, if you would. And as you mentioned, at the time, all of my children were still at home. They're adults now, but at the time, all of my children were still at home. And, I'm a working mother, and I'm trying to, make ends meet. And it's just multiple challenges. So that was one of the bigger ones for me as far as my professional career. Personally, I've gone through a lot of things from my own health challenges to the health challenges of my spouse and, multiple deaths in the family and things of that nature. So it doesn't come without its own set of unique, I'll just say it challenges again. Aside from that, just maintaining that sense of peace and that inner joy that keeps you going. It's not about the happiness. Happiness is based on what's happening. And that's not what drives me or moves me. It has to be internal because when, I have to sacrifice sleep to get a project done, when I have to sacrifice sleep because I'm sitting in the hospital with a child or with an elderly parent and things of that nature, you have to know why you're there and what keeps you going. So just keeping those types of things in mind. We make it look good on the outside. People don't know all of the challenges that I've had to experience day to day, particularly this year. People just don't understand that. And I'll just give you a quick snippet of my January. January this year, First, my mother had a stroke and was hospitalized, and then she went to rehab, and then she came and stayed with me for a little while before she was finally able to go home. And while all of that was going on, our son was murdered, and my daughter was hospitalized. My daughter is a lupus warrior, so she's dealing with her own health complications, and it just happened back to back to back. And you can imagine, how that can take somebody out. So again, we make it look good on the outside, and a lot of times, especially if you follow me on social media and things of that nature, you don't always see those challenges, you don't always see those struggles, because a lot of that I keep very private. Only those people who are closest to me really know everything that's going on. But like I said, we make it look good, but it's not without its challenges.
Yeah, yeah. And so most of the things that you were talking about were things that were happening to you,
Yes.
right, in your space.
Yes.
But people don't understand what's happening on the inside of here.
That's right.
What's happening on the inside of here, the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, the questioning. We don't really talk about, those I call it battle scars. Right?
That's right.
We don't really talk about that stuff. And so, yes, we do make it look easy on the outside, and sometimes the veneer can be shiny. But in order for something to get shiny, it got to get polished.
That's right.
A lot of times, what we go through is it's just God polishing us up. That's all it is.
Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing that, man. Because I really value when people of influence can be appropriately transparent. Of course, you didn't tell us all your business. We don't need to know all your business, but we know enough to know that, man, this is a real person. And
That's right.
Yes, you are successful, and yes, you have some accomplishments, and yes, God is using you to do great things, but you're still a person. People need to know that.
Yes.
People need to know that. So, what is God saying to you about your business right now?
Which one? So let's start with Visions International, because I am the senior pastor of Visions International. So in that space specifically, when things happen over the last year and a half, I'll say, I had my own questions, but I'm obedient and I do what I'm told. When God says do it, you do it. But what happened is we went from being in a physical building to really operating in a more virtual space. And virtual space in one aspect of what we were doing, and it really incorporated small groups. So instead of having a larger worship service, we went to small groups. So it was a much more intimate setting, and when I tell you that I could see the growth of the people that I'm serving and that I'm working with, it was very powerful. So to fast forward to where we are now, where many or the majority of ministries are working in a virtual space, it was as if he was preparing us early on and giving us the model that would be quite effective with where we are now. So I'm grateful for that experience, and that's what comes to mind first. And I was just sharing with people about that. So that comes to mind first. But aside from that, I am always looking at how I can improve my services. So next I'll talk about Claire Alden Publications, because that really is my God-given business. I am very passionate about storytelling. I'm passionate about writing and publishing and selling books and getting the stories and getting the information out there. So that's really where my love is. And I look forward to the day where I'm actually able to transition into that in a more full-time way. But what I'm excited about with that is several things. Again, leading up to where I am today, I only launched that company in 2017. Within the first 2 years, we had 12 authors that have been published. Now, mind you, I'm doing this aside from my full-time job. So, that was a feat in itself. We became members of the Independent Book Publishing Association, which is a national organization that provides professional development and other services to independent publishers. It also provides a criteria for hybrid publishers, which is what my company is. It's a hybrid between traditional and self-publishing. In addition to that, I was able to go through the accreditation process, and we're now Better Business Bureau accredited. So all of that to be able to put us not only in a space where we're providing great customer service and great experiences to our clientele, but we're also establishing ourselves as this professional presence. So moving from there to where we are now, I am in the mindset of continuous quality improvement. So how can I improve the customer experience? How can I improve the services that I offer? What is it that my clients need? What is it that they need to know? What additional resources should be available to them? So that's the mindset that I'm in. I'm not the type of person that would sit and be complacent or say, okay, yep, we've done well so far because we have X number of authors and they sold X number of books and they're doing exceptionally well. I'm not satisfied with that. It's like, okay, how can we take it to the next level? Because I know God always expects us to continue to grow and to prosper. So, how can I do that in the experiences that I'm offering to those that I serve? So, those are the two main things that come up to mind as far as Visions International and Claire Alden Publications.
Right. I want to ask you a question, kind of tongue in cheek, but why are you tricking the people? You're tricking us. I'm gonna tell you why.
Okay.
Because in the beginning you said that you're an introvert, but all the stuff you're doing is a bunch of extroverted stuff.
That's a good question. So I am an introvert. When I say that, people look at me like, really, for real? But yes, I am. I have come to a place where I know what I offer and I know the value that I provide. So I have to push myself out of my comfort zone every single day to be able to go and do these things. And then once I've done it, and I always seek to do the very best in every opportunity, I want to present my best self because I'm representing God wherever I go. So I try really hard to make sure I'm putting my best foot forward, putting everything out there that I need to in order to show God's goodness and grace through me. But then once it's over, I retreat and I recharge. So that part is very important for me. And everybody in my household knows the bedroom is my sanctuary. That's where I go to recharge. And that's very much needed as an introvert. So I can do all these, outward facing activities and share with people and look great from stage and all of that. But when I go home, that's when I recharge. So yeah.
Yeah, you kind of sound like me. When I'm on stage, I can do that all day if I don't have to stop, right?
Yes.
But once I stop, I'm like, you go back to the vendor table, sign your books, take pictures with people. But once I leave the venue,
That's it.
I need some time.
Right.
I need some time.
Yes.
Right. Because we give it all. We give it all when we're doing our work.
That's right.
God gives it to us, and we just dump out, and we got to go back and recharge so God can give us some more. So
that's right.
I understand. I understand. I'm the same way. I was.
Good question, though.
Yeah. So last question. Going forward, what is your goal for your business, and how do you want God to be glorified going forward in your business?
Excellent. I want God to be glorified in every story. So I can honestly say that when I first started, as far as being a publisher, I was open to multiple genres and multiple stories, and I really didn't have a defined presence that I was looking for as far as submissions. And I'm at the place now where I am much more focused and know where I want to spend my time. So that has been much more refined for me recently. And I know that in doing so, I will allow the voices that need to emerge that glorify God in the highest to come forth from that. So that's one of the ways that I'm really focusing and refining what Claire Alden Publications represents, what I represent as the one who is supporting, pushing, and publishing these works. So that's one way. Again, with my professional development, I'm always looking for ways to make me better. So whether it is as director of diversity and inclusion, I make sure I set aside time for professional development with that. As a publisher, I set aside time for professional development for that. As a pastor, I set aside time for professional development for that. So at bare minimum, that's at least 3 large conferences that I'm participating in to make me better so that others can pour into me so that I can then offer the best of me to someone else. But it also includes the podcasts, the videos, the books. I'm such a book nerd. Oh my goodness. So the books that make me better so that in the downtime or in my time, waiting in the airport, getting on a plane or whatever, I'm constantly making me better. So those are the things that come to mind for me. I'm always open and listening for how God is going to do things differently. He's already given me a couple plans as far as new events that would bring greater exposure to what the authors are doing and how we can talk about that in a greater way and how they can be highlighted and how he can be highlighted ultimately and how his name can be lifted up. So, I'm always listening for that next, wise or innovative idea, event, etc., to be able to bring his name glory. It's not about me, it's all about him.
And stuff. Where can people find out more about you?
Excellent. So, the best way to find out more about me probably right now is starting with the website. So my website is www.clairealdin.com. That's CLAIREALDIN.com. I can also be found on social media. So all of my personal social media is Dr. DC Matthews. So you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. And then also the business page, Claire Alden, is at Claire Alden. Our ministry page is at Ministry Visions. So those are the best ways to keep up with what's going on and stay in touch. If anybody wants to email me, my email is info@clairealden.com.
Dr. D, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on this show. I'm pretty sure that everybody who watched it can at least get one thing to help transform their life. So I thank you very much for sharing your experiences and sharing and being transparent and authentic with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right. And for those of you who are watching, remember that what you want to become depends on your willingness to become it. Have a great day. All right, Dr. D.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you. You did great. You did great. So I'm going to be cutting this up, and I'll let you know what platform.